Welcome to Equilibrium Echoes, the podcast where we delve into the transformative power of your inner world on your relationships. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker. Join me as we unlock the secrets of emotional equilibrium and dig deep into the tools and insights needed to foster healthier, more fulfilling relationships in ways that feel safe and authentic. Welcome back to Equilibrium Echoes. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker, and today I'm here with Vanessa Dawn. We are going to have a fascinating conversation. We haven't even had it yet, and I'm already sure that it's going to be fascinating. We're going to talk today about how emotions get stored in our body, how they live in our body, and how we can actually take action to move them out of our body, what all of that looks like. I think this is going to shed some light on some questions that you may have had that you don't even know that you have had. Maybe it's going to explain some reactions or some responses that you've been dealing with that you're just not sure you even understand or have words for. So I'm excited to get into this today. Vanessa is an energy healer. Her website is dawninghope.net. Vanessa, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
It's absolutely a privilege. We just did a summit together recently, so that's kind of how we became acquainted. And I would love for you to just kind of kick off this episode by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into this energy work that you do today.
Yeah, so my name is Vanessa. I offer intuitive energy shifting sessions. I'm certified in emotion code, body code, belief code, intuitive rebirth, and nearing the end of my certification as a trauma-informed care practitioner and a quantum healing practitioner. I'm currently putting together resources and a guide to help people become more in touch with their own energy and body, because I think that's a really important aspect that kind of affects everyone's lives in some way, whether it's disconnection or connection. Through gaining knowledge in restoring balance to the mind, body, and spirit as a whole, I actually went from bedridden to now feeling better than I ever have. And my vision for my business, Dawning Hope, it's to let others know that even after the darkest night, the sun always rises and the dawn brings new hope. So how I got into this work was with my own health struggles and my son's as well. And I don't know if you want to go into that story or go more towards.
Yeah, I would love to hear a little bit of your story.
Okay. So we lived in a home with toxic mold, and we began experiencing, it felt like basically every symptom under the sun. Like a lot of neurological and digestive issues for sure. And little did I know that we were both holding trauma that also hindered the healing of these symptoms, and including trapped emotions that kind of block the energy. So I kind of started down a rabbit hole of trying to find ways to feel better and ways to help my son. That I've always been more holistic minded, I guess, so I didn't necessarily take a Western medicine route, but from what I hear, they don't always recognize mold toxicity, and so I kind of turned more towards the functional medicine route, and went down all the rabbit holes with detoxification and getting mold out of the body and all the things. And so we did detoxes, and I'm just not the type of person to remain very surface level, obviously, with my work. So I kept digging and eventually I came to the idea of energy healing, and it just felt like home. Okay, I know this. And little did I know I've actually always been pretty sensitive and aware of energy. Obviously, I didn't know that's what was going on. I thought everyone experienced the world like that, but turns out I'm pretty sensitive and aware of energy, so that has helped a lot with my work as well.
It's interesting because I've probably recorded 40, 45 podcast episodes now, and I think almost every guest that I've had on has started their journey to where they are now from some kind of personal experience. I don't think very many of us wake up and think, oh, I want to be an energy healer, or oh, I want to be a, relationship conflict coach. Like, we get here because of our life experience. And that's part of what makes you so good at what you do, because you are completely relating to someone that you're helping. You're not coming at it strictly from a textbook point of view. I think there's an emotional awareness and connection that happens. So explain to us, I always like to start out with a few definitions and terminology clarifications to make sure we're all on the same page. So when we talk about emotions being stored in the body and being getting stuck there, blocking energy and needing to be processed out of the body, can you kind of give us like the explanation of what that looks like and what's happening there? What are we actually talking about?
So in the certifications that I have taken, they describe a trapped emotion similar to like a ball of energy. And, when you're in tune with your body and, your stress levels aren't too high and you feel overall well, you can process these energies through your body typically without any, hindrance. But when you are under a lot of stress or you have some weaknesses in your body, or you already have previous blockages in your body, these can kind of become stuck, or they can be kind of saved for later. Like your body's like, we don't have the energy for this right now, or we don't have like the mental capacity, whatever it might be. And so they kind of get put aside, like we'll come back to that and feel that later. But so often we don't, because first of all, I don't feel like there's enough awareness around the concept to realize, oh, I didn't fully feel through that, I need to go back. And, and then by the time we become aware of it, we often have quite a buildup, it seems like.
Or we have a resistance to going back to it in the first place because it was a negative emotion. Like, why would we want to go back and process that? Is that why people often get stuck in grief for a long time and they're not able to move out of? Because I know I've heard people say, like, my loved one passed away 3 years ago and I still can't get over it. I feel like it just happened yesterday. Is that kind of an example of what you're talking about things getting stuck and not getting processed?
I think it can apply with grief, because grief is such it often feels so big and daunting and like overwhelming. I also think from my personal experience that grief is often almost reignited more often than, I guess similar to if you had a lot of instances in your life where you felt angry and didn't kind of shove that down, you might have a lot of anger, explosive outbursts now. But I think that grief, it's kind of, I personally feel like it's in a realm of its own in a way, just because it's, your memories of that loved one can trigger, I don't know, it's just a little different, I feel like. But like I said, with the anger, I feel like that kind of explains what I'm talking about, how it can become re-triggered in things with memories still, but it's not kind of ever present like grief can be.
Okay. So what are some of the things that you hear from clients who come into your practice? Like, what are some of the experiences that they have that bring them to you?
I feel like I resonate a lot with a lot of people who feel like they've kind of hit rock bottom, or like they have nowhere else to turn. I think, when we meet ourselves at such a depth and we go through such adversity, that there's just a resonance or like an understanding in a sense. Not to say, we ever can really understand what someone else is going through, but like you kind of get the feeling of the rock bottom sensation. And I do see that some. I also see a lot of like things that their Western medicine doctor might write off as like anxiety or depression, and that might come with like bodily pains that they're like, what about this? And they don't really understand what's going on. They just feel like their whole body is just sort of in a reaction, and so they just don't know where else to turn. And then there are a lot of people as well who are kind of in the realm of energy and kind of getting aware of frequencies and things, and I do see them often seeking like energy healing type of work just because they believe in it and they're like, I know this will shift something.
Yeah. Okay. So the person who's listening and they're thinking, this is really interesting. Like, I'm wondering, looking back at my life, that thinking that I probably do have a bunch of stuck emotions. They see, and I know because I have some of the same training that you do, not all of it, but I know that when you hear something like this conversation, it will trigger things. Like your subconscious will bring up memories that you haven't thought about in a long time. And all of a sudden you're going, oh, wait a minute, right? Maybe I do. So for that person who's sitting here going, well, I never really considered that, but actually, now that I think about it, and they're getting some new awareness here. What are the first steps? Like, how do we get to a place where we start kind of like going, yeah, I think this is actually what's going on. Maybe I have some stored emotions I need to deal with.
I think a huge thing is if you are reacting in a heightened way to things that might not necessarily warrant that reaction, like if you drop a dish and you just like kind of fall to tears, or just kind of not overreacting. I don't want to say that, but it is like it's an imbalance of a reaction to things that would normally be kind of minor to someone who is feeling balanced. Also, emotional outbursts can be a pretty good indicator, as well as kind of random pains in the body. I've seen a lot of that, just like the if you think of the trapped emotional energy, I'm not sure if your listeners are super aware of like TCM or like the energy meridians or anything like that, but there's this concept that your body has energetic meridians running through, and that's kind of a communication process between the body, like similar to like your veins and your nervous system, the systems that are intricately connected to the body. And the idea is that these energetic, emotional, I guess you could say balls, they can block these energetic meridians and can block flow and can block communication, can just cause a lot of different issues. So I would say those are some pretty good indicators.
And would you say that, like, because I think a lot of us can identify with the overreacting, but I think, at least my experience has been that it's particularly true when I overreact and I don't really know why. Like, there's a difference, I think, between having a big overreaction when you're in, like, when your mom just died or you've just lost your job. Like, you have an immediate connection there, right, to kind of understand why you're overreacting. Yeah. But the times when you don't, those are those kind of signs that you're talking about. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say those are the ones that are more in the past rather than the present. Like when you're not in a super apparent heightened state of stress and you just feel like you can't handle your day-to-day, like a plate dropping, it's just like, is this too much? Or, it's like there's an overwhelm in the body is what it feels like sometimes.
Okay, so once we become aware of this, because, it happens without our awareness. Mm-hmm. We're usually not consciously storing emotions in our body. Like, we don't have that understanding. So what do we do when we start becoming aware of this?
I personally think that connection with the body and connecting with the nervous system can be super helpful, because oftentimes you can kind of fully move through emotions when your nervous system's in like a calm state, rather than, when you're already stressed, your body's not like, oh, here's more to deal with. It's kind of like, saving it for later. And that's often when you do trap more emotions, is when you're in a more stressed state. So Um, like I reference this in my upcoming guide called Embody Presence, but especially for people who aren't super familiar with connecting with their body, I like to bring them back to their breath. And like you can just start softening like the tension that you feel anywhere, and just like remind yourself that you're safe, and any discomfort that's present, instead of resisting it, just like allow it just for a moment. And in allowing it and acknowledging it, often there's a lot of shifts that can happen in that alone. Um, Sometimes you can even, if you have kind of deeper awareness, you can kind of go into where you feel like an emotion might be. I mean, if you're taken somewhere, you're usually not off. Like you're being guided somehow. And so even if there's no logical reason, like that something might be trapped in your abdomen or something, which is a pretty common place I've found, just trust, and then you can just acknowledge it, which can shift it. You can like thank it for showing you where it is. You can identify like colors or shapes or sensations that you're noticing. Just like really becoming really present to it is super helpful in shifting it, essentially.
Okay.
But yeah, just if you're having trouble, I would say just connect to your breath and just kind of become present to your breath. And even if you need to like count your breaths, however it might be, just to start, dabbling in the realm of the getting in touch with the body again.
Okay, so that was you gave us a very what's the word I'm looking for? That was kind of an in-depth look, right? Like you touched on some really deep things there. I want to pull back for just a second because I know there's some people that are like, what now? Because, and I know this from personal experience because I was someone for years and years had absolutely no awareness that my body was connected to my emotions and that my body could tell me things, like none. And, I lived very much in my head, very intellectually. And so for the person who's like, wait a minute, like, wait, I don't even know what we're talking about right now. Like, you completely lost me. Explain that for a minute about the mind-body connection and how someone who's in that situation can start to understand the signals that their body's telling them.
Yeah, so one thing to think about is that your body is constantly speaking to you, just not often with words. It's usually in sensations. And for anyone who's not familiar with like the subconscious mind, they say that only 5% of our brain is our conscious mind, and the other 95% of that is subconscious. And so often the subconscious is connected with the body. So often when you're picking up on things subconsciously, you can feel it in your body. And like you said, we aren't typically consciously trapping emotions. So this often happens on that subconscious level. And so if an emotion's trapped, your subconscious is going to be more aware of it than your conscious mind. So then when you focus on your breath and really just beginning to be present to your physical body, like even just like feeling your feet on the floor for the first time in a while, maybe, that's beginning to connect with the body and hence beginning to connect with the subconscious mind, which is where you can find these energies that I've been talking about. Does that answer your question, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think another way that I would put it, and again, tell me if I'm wrong here, because you're more trained in some of this than I am, but I think of breathing exercises, for example, as a way of like drawing attention to things that we don't normally pay attention to. Like none of us walk through our lives thinking about breathing, but when we deliberately breathe and we concentrate on that, like there's a breathing exercise that I teach where it's inhale 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds, exhale. It connects your brain with what your body's doing in a way that we don't normally have. Like there's not something we normally think about. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a very intentional way of like becoming present to your body. Again,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we're not often connected to our body when we're just going about our day.
Yes. And we ignore. I mean, sometimes we deliberately
Yeah.
ignore our body.
Sometimes
We'll
it's
have,
inconvenient.
yes, we'll have pain or we'll have discomfort and we just push through anyway because we feel like we have to. And that can create a whole other host of problems, can't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, okay. So again, like my 10 years ago me, skeptic brain is coming around to this idea that maybe my body is connected to my emotions and there might be some things that I have not dealt with that are stuck in my body. And you've already mentioned a couple of the ways that that shows up in your body, like the physical manifestations of that. But can you give me some specific examples of, from your own experience or from people you've worked with, how a physical sensation showed up and what that process looked like to uncover what was stuck?
Yeah, so with myself, I've also been in the seat of the skeptic as well. So, um, one of the first times I went into somatics, I think it was a little easier for me from when I've talked to other people because I was so sensitive to energy, I guess. Um, so as soon as I connected with it, it was just like, it was like I knew what I was doing. Or like, it was like, this is familiar. Okay, I get this. So then that skepticism went away a little easier than it might for some people. Like I know, I've known people and I've had people that, they still have a hard time grasping it. So for example, like I thought about, why do I always feel, scared to go out in a crowd? And then I thought about, okay, what emotion do I connect with that experience? And immediately I thought fear. And so I thought, okay, where is this in my body? And it was like right around, I'm not sure if you've ever talked about chakras. The solar plexus chakra is right about the opening of the ribs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was right around that area in my abdomen. And when I went into it, it was like a gray rock is what I saw. And so if you can give it that color or that shape or that texture, it really like connects you with it. And sometimes like these trapped emotions kind of just need acknowledged, and sometimes they will shift with just that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of ironic because sometimes they just need allowed. And so instead of trying to make it go away, the moment that you just surrender and let it be there, sometimes that'll shift it. But I've even went into like almost conversing with it, like, hey, like, is there anything that you need? Like, because sometimes these can kind of, represent that part of you that was scared in that moment. Like, and that that part of you needed comfort or safety. And so if you can bring it what it needed, then often it will shift as well.
So again, the skeptic in me, right, is going, yeah, but like talking to yourself, like that's kind of weird.
Yep.
But I think it goes back to what you said a little bit ago about how really such a small percentage of the conversations that happen in our body are things that our conscious mind is actually aware of. And so I think it makes it less weird or easier to accept when we realize like this is kind of just our conscious mind talking to our subconscious. Like it's all parts of us that are already there, all these things that are happening, and we're just using our conscious mind to access all the stuff that's already there and is already happening.
It's similar to like thinking, like anyone who's ever like had a conversation in their head, it's just
Yes.
like I think it's often portrayed like you're crazy if you do, you know, but it's a pretty natural thing. I think for most people, just in your head, just going about your day, you know, you just da 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 thinking and
Right.
kind of have the conversations back and forth sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I've talked to a lot of people that seems to be the case anyway.
Yes.
And
I think I'm constantly having some kind of conversation with myself in my head.
yeah.
And I occasionally answer myself too, even though.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's similar to talking things out loud. Like you can process by having these
Yeah.
internal conversations, and you can process your emotions by having these conversations with the sensations that are happening in your body. So in
Yes.
your specific example, you had this fear of going out into public places. And once you kind of acknowledge that, you said you felt it like a gray rock in your solar plexus area. What happened next?
Yeah, and so with this specific example, I think what needed to happen was that there was a little tiny version of me, I guess you could say, like maybe perhaps when that fear was trapped. I think I was a child, like a young child. And like I just wanted safety or like a sensation of safety or like it's okay, we're safe. That kind of the comfort. And so once I just kind of I mean you can just acknowledge that with your mind by kind of put my hands there and was just like I'm safe and then in my present environment felt all the ways that I am safe. Like I'm protected from the weather, I'm in this warm house, I'm safe, and my loved ones are here, all of the things, all of the evidence of safety essentially. And in doing that, it felt like that gray, heavy stone type sensation just kind of like exited out my back.
Mm,
And at first it
interesting.
does sound a little, woo woo, but I mean, if you just trust it without attachment to it and just think, oh, I'll try it, you might be fascinated with, what comes up.
Yeah. So did you feel a difference then in your response to crowds and crowded situations after you did that work?
So I think I went through like 5 or 6 different emotions in that moment. And then, I also practiced the emotion code, which is a different way of releasing trapped emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a whole technique. And so I did work on that and I'm a little too brave with crowds sometimes. Like I have teenage siblings that I sometimes embarrass because I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like no one's even looking, or like no one cares what we're doing. So I'm just like, whatever. We can walk this way, and no one's gonna, just. It used to be
Mm-hmm.
kind of like thinking, oh no, everyone's looking at me, everyone's judging me, kind of, and now I'm just like, everyone's doing their own thing, and I'm doing my own thing.
So you not only noticed a difference, but it was a pretty dramatic difference, is what I
Yeah,
hear you
and
saying.
yeah, and over time, and I think that you can notice a pretty big difference by just, becoming present to or shifting one of those sensations. But sometimes there's also like layers to it, and you kind of have to
Right.
revisit it a few times.
Yeah, that makes sense. And most people know that, especially when it comes to, because we talk a lot about trauma healing and healing triggers and all those things. And I think we do understand that there's layers to that. And we often have to go back and readdress things
Yeah.
that we thought we had dealt with. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and I've
So,
heard it referred to as like you're not like going backwards or anything. It's a spiral, and so you're deepening your understanding or your healing.
I like that. Because then you don't feel like that takes away that, but I've already been here and done that kind
Yeah.
of feeling. We
Yeah,
can,
you're actually revisiting it from a completely different state of being.
yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so we talked before we hit record, we were talking in kind of our pre-chat about logic and how logic can really interfere with this healing process. I think so many times we default to logic. I think that's part of that is conditioning our society. That's where our society defaults or tells us to go. Why does logic not work? in helping kind of release some of these emotions? And how do we sort of learn to set aside logic when we're talking about some of these emotional healing things?
Yeah, so oftentimes I think of logic as like an ego, or like kind of an aspect of you that's kind of your inner critic, or it's always that, yeah, like logical. And often that area, or that, however you'd like to think of it, that aspect of you, it often craves like familiarity and predictability, and that's what it equals to safety. And so anything that you might do to disrupt that predictability or familiarity might be seen as like a threat. Like, well, we don't know what's going to happen if we do something different, so we can't do something different. And the reality is that oftentimes when we're trying to make positive shifts, it's actually a safer way of being overall, even if it's not necessarily predictable in the way that I've experienced this before, so I know it's going to happen, which you can also think of it like you never really do know what's going to happen. So predictability in itself is kind of an illusion.
Right.
But I've really noticed it to be helpful for me to identify that as like, okay, this is my inner critic or my ego. Some people even give it like a name just to kind of like know that this isn't me necessarily, but this is the logical mind coming in to try and protect me. And like some people like to, when it comes in, say thank you for protecting me or trying to protect me. Like, I appreciate you, I see you, I hear you, but you know, this is best for me because this. Or I've heard of someone, they called it a gremlin. They said a gremlin in its chair, and just like, you go sit over there for a minute, I'm going to try this new thing. And so it's, however, I like to think of more of a peaceful, you know, like peace within the self approach of like, I love you, I'm here for you, but you know, it's to each his own. So I think that answered the first part of the question. What was the second part of that?
Well, you kind of answered the second part too, because the second part was, how do we start getting logic out of the way in order to get to what's going on?
Yeah, that's kind of what I've found to be helpful.
Yeah. I found in general that just acknowledging that it doesn't have to be a war. Like, it's not your logic and your rational brain against this other side of you, right?
Yeah.
Or this inner... every part of you is working to protect you. It's working to keep you safe. And when you can sort of view it that way, you can help bring all those parts of you into alignment so that they're cooperating. But our logical brain can often be like that, you know, that kid that's just standing there going, mom, 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 mom. And they're not going to stop until you acknowledge, right, that they're there. And you see them and you have a need. They have a need, and, you know, and that doesn't mean that you immediately give them what they want. You know, sometimes I will look at my kids and I'll say, I see you. I know you want a snack. I will get you a snack in 10 minutes, right? And then I expect them to go and do something else besides call my name for the next 10 minutes. And we can use those kind of techniques to sort of parent ourselves through this work. But learning to see it, I think, as a cooperative effort instead of as this internal conflict can be really helpful. Yeah. So give us a couple of pointers. Like, I want to leave people with like some takeaways in like little bite-sized pieces. If they're listening to this and they are intrigued, like they think maybe there's some stuff that would apply to them, give us a few like key takeaways that you would love for people to be kind of thinking through and starting to work on. Yeah,
the first thing that comes to my mind is that, you know, your body is not your enemy, and all parts of you are always working in your favor.
And that, by the way, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that can be really hard if someone is struggling with chronic illness or chronic pain.
Yeah. And
Because we do feel like we've been betrayed by our own bodies.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
And
just want to acknowledge that.
absolutely. Yeah. I think of autoimmune too. You know, you're told that your body is attacking itself.
Mm.
And I actually dealt with that myself. And I personally, I had issues being in coherence with myself. And I think that there is an energetic aspect at play, like not to say, you know, coming in unison will heal everything, but I think just meeting yourself and acknowledging like even if you feel like there's a lot of internal conflict, just knowing that like if you can come to this place similar probably to relationships externally, like you can come from this place of like compassion and like love and peace and acknowledgement and curiosity. I think that can start to roll the ball in the direction of like meeting yourself in that way. But I mean, if you can start to shift your thinking away from thinking that any part of you is against you, or removing kind of that victim thought pattern, I guess is what it could be, and
Mm-hmm.
try to see it from an empowered perspective of okay, like what can I learn from this, or is this showing me something that will help me? Like oftentimes our body is giving us messages of an imbalance or something of the sort that's going on within, and it's actually saving us. Like it's truly saving our life all the time and healing all the time, but it has to compensate in some way, and it wants you to know like this is going on. You know, I'm here to support you. I want you to see this so that you can heal it and, you know, do something to change it. And I've thought of like, there's a song I love. It's called like It Is Well. And the main lyrics are like, it is well with my soul. And so if you think of it, like take your perspective and just kind of zoom out and think about like, there is a reason that I'm experiencing this.
Yeah.
And I mean, just taking it and learning from your body's messages rather than feeling betrayed that your body is giving you messages. I think that that's a really important step to finding peace within yourself.
Absolutely. Okay, so I derailed you. I asked you for points and then I interrupted you, but your first point was like learning to make friends with your body.
Yes, sorry.
What else? No, that was excellent. I just was trying to undo my derailment and help us both get back on track.
Yeah.
So what else would you say for someone who like some key points to take away from this conversation?
So going forward, like thinking, I mean, just becoming more conscious of what you are feeling in a moment, because like we said, acknowledgement alone can help it to not either shift it or not become trapped in the first place. So, you know, going forward, if you don't feel like you want to go into the old emotions that might be within you, maybe just start bringing a little more consciousness to what you are feeling in the moment. Like if you start to feel yourself become stressed or like overwhelmed, that's kind of a place that people can often trap emotions. So maybe just, you know, noticing some bodily awareness, like noticing your feet on the floor, or if you're sitting in a chair, like noticing the chair underneath of you, or, you know, noticing your surroundings, just different things to bring presence so that maybe you can acknowledge what's moving through in order to move it through. I feel like that's a pretty important one, you know, to not continue trapping them.
Yeah, if you don't know how to release the stuff that you need to, if you can at least work on not adding more, that's always a good place to start.
Yeah.
So Vanessa, tell people how they can find you, how they can connect with you, who are the people that you work with, and how do you help them? Tell us all the things.
Yeah. So, my one-on-one sessions are, I don't have them, I guess I don't have a necessarily a niche, but I can help many people if you feel like just heavy, or if you feel like you're having some strange pains, or if you feel like you're feeling super emotional, or if there's something that you just feel stuck in, whatever it may be, I do offer one-to-one sessions that shift energy. I offer various types. So there are like the emotion code, body code, and belief code. And that's working with the subconscious and communicating via muscle testing in order to ask the subconscious questions and get more information. And then we can like release unwanted beliefs that are no longer serving you. Or, with emotion code and body code, it can be releasing trapped emotions and rebalancing different areas of the body through energy. I also offer some channeling sessions, which is another layer of depth, I think. And then I also offer like combination sessions between like the channeling and the more subconscious work, I guess you could say. My Instagram is I am Vanessa Dawn, and then my website is dawninghope.net.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to put all of Vanessa's links and social media, her website, all of those things in the podcast notes. So if you want to connect with her, go find her on Instagram, go to her website, and poke around. I'm sure that Vanessa would love to hear from you and help in any way she can. So Vanessa, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to have this conversation with us, sharing your expertise. I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of people who are like the me from 10 years ago, or probably even the you from 10 years ago, who have a lot of work to do that they may not even be aware of right now, and maybe help them start to understand some things that have confused them for a long time. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's been really fun. I'm excited to hear from anybody that would like to reach out.
Love it. All right. Well, all of that is in the show notes or in the description of the video if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time on another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. If you would like to learn more about the podcast, visit www.coachingwithalyssa.com/podcast. And while you're there, book your free consultation and download the preview of my new book, Marriage is Hard and Other Lies I Believed. I'll see you in the next episode.